school board meeting for Garrard County School System. And please note that four board members are present. Dr. Lamb just informed me that she is on her way, and of course our superintendent. So at this time, I'd like to call our meeting to order. And before we get started, would you join me in a moment of silence, please? Thank you very much. If you're able, please join me in standing and say the pledge to the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Item C is to adopt the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Hart made a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
Ms. Davis seconded. All in favor, let me know by lifting the hand. And we only have two items on the agenda that were just adopted. Item 2 is to approve a changeover for the Garrard County High School project. Dr. Stowe, would you enlighten us, please?
Yeah, I'll try to give you a brief story. We have a number of people here who can clarify anything that I'm not clear on, or any questions that you might have. At the beginning of this project at the high school, we knew that there was going to be a point in time where we would lose some of our geothermal wells. And we were informed that that would not be a problem for the school, that there would be ample capacity to continue to cool and heat the building. Brad Avey came to me early part of July. You have an email there that you can see that I've provided for you, so you can see a trail, and notified me that the loop temperatures this year were significantly higher than the loop temperatures last year, even though the outside temperature was lower this year than last year. And so the only thing that was different was that we had fewer wells. So we reached out, shared our concerns, and my understanding at that point, CMTA started looking at the process to figure out how to mitigate this. On July 27th, we still had the same situation going on, and we were now within a much closer time frame of having people in the building. So we raised the question again, and you'll see a response there from CMTA that said they were on site that day working on that. We still didn't get a fix. So last Thursday, a meeting was held that involved CMTA, Buckfelter Salmon Car, and Trace Creek. And the bottom line is we are at a spot now where we have to make a decision today about how we proceed in order to provide an air-conditioned environment at the high school starting next week. I can truthfully say nobody wants to be here tonight. I don't think there's a single person sitting out there who wants to be here today, and I certainly don't want to be here today. But the advice that we received on Thursday was to go through a process where we would cut a purchase order ourselves and rent a temporary solution. And to do that, it means that we would be starting tomorrow on a pretty tight time frame, where we bring in a portable chiller that would be added to, I think that's right, and then present cooling tower, chiller or cooling tower. Bring in a portable cooling tower that would be added to the system that would do enough to make it possible for us to have the air conditioning that our students and our staff should have and would be accustomed to. There could be a potential issue with heat at some point in time. We don't know that at this point. Most of the information that's being shared with me is that the heat may very well be okay, but we did ask on Thursday for a full-blown solution to be provided to you tonight. We can't give you the heating solution today. You have a couple of documents there, one that I provided for you and one that Brad Beatty has provided that's a little more updated with a little bit more information on it than I was able to provide to you with my initial print. of information. What we asked for was for them to make sure in this case, and I say them, I'm talking about all entities involved, not just one, but I asked them to under-promise and over-deliver so that whatever number you see there today should be without using this word, not to exceed, but to not to exceed type of number as we move forward with this project. There was some debate on Thursday as to who should be held accountable for this. Obviously from the district standpoint, we don't feel like we've done anything wrong. We've simply done what we were asked to do. However, to get into a spitting match or spitting contest right now simply could mean that we have students who don't have air on next week. And I don't think that that's something that we can live with or something that we would tolerate. So there may be a point where we need to go back and ask questions about who is accountable for all of this and how do we proceed from that standpoint. You have a contract in front of you with a company that can make this happen for us. And we are ready to move forward with this with your all's approval, if you're all comfortable with that. The contract and the numbers that you will see there account for weekend work if that's necessary. It's a premium for delivery to make sure that timely arrival of the product is here. So again, if all things go as they should, it would be our hope that on Monday of next week, we're fully operational, ready to go. And that's still a day before our transition day and 2 days before the first day of students being with us. We would hope that everything works that way. Many of the contractors who would be involved in this are contractors who are already on site for us, who are already working with us. So we weren't asking additional people to be engaged or involved through that process. Again, I don't think anybody wants to be here today and talk about this, but I do think it's a decision we have to make or at least consider today and move forward. So I'll be quiet at that point and let you all ask questions and allow anybody out there who needs to inject any comments to do so.
Before I call for motion, do any of you have anything you'd like to add to what Dr. Stoll shared? Or?
I'll just say what you're looking at here is what we were asked, which is a worst case scenario. So he plans it all the way out through spring, the end of school. Our goal is to come away from this, immediately pivot to how can we minimize this, reduce this overall time frame, and then be bringing back solutions to you throughout this process, as well as addressing the other issues at hand. But so that we don't have to come back and repetitively ask for more money to keep this issue going. This spans from August to May. You can see the kind of the price breakdown on the upfront cost, the monthly cost, and then the closeout cost. And at any point during that, if we can shorten the months, those months disappear, and we have an opening and a closing, and however many months in between we actually need it. We worked hard to try to get the full number in front of you. We were not successful in finding the temporary heating solution. We're hoping to have that number tomorrow. But some of the numbers, especially where you saw that I had marked through and scribbled, those reflect both the heating and the cooling number. So if we only had to go with the cooling option, then that number would be significantly less than what you're seeing in front of you. We just didn't have the information I was provided driving down here and getting the information. We didn't have a clear breakdown of what was cooling, what was heating, so I'm just showing you the whole number at this point.
So that would include the heating if we have to have it.
That includes the labor from that company for the heating. The CKSM is our mechanical contractor for the project. So their number that they provided to us was a whole number, not a breakdown for cooling and breakdown for heating. So I just shown it to you so that you can see the worst scenario for that number as well.
Now, how long before the thermal wells will be completed to replace the ones that we lost?
So I'll speak, it's in front of you. We've got it there showing that by the schedule we currently have, drilling is to start in January. Should proceed and be hopefully finished by April based on our schedule.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we're showing there as the what we're working around. And that's, you know, getting that connected into our new field, connected into the old field, all revolves around certain timing windows that we'll have to hit. So, that's what we hope to come away from this. If we get this behind us, y'all get school open, then we can sit down and start having these conversations about what can we do to minimize this cost by making some adjustments there. Can we make adjustments? That would be the question.
Good.
So all this is basically a temporary solution.
This is. So,
Guess I'm out of my league here, so I won't even, forgive me or anything like that. If I ask a stupid question or anything like that, how about stability? We're coming in, we're applying a temporary situation to our needs at this particular point. How stable is this gonna be? In other words, how dependable are we going to? We start getting into some extreme heat, getting into some extreme coolness. Is this gonna take care of our students and teachers and everything adequately?
I'm gonna refer that to Chris.
I'll take that one. I'm Chris Reeves with CMTA Engineers. So the system that's being installed is basically you have a geothermal well field, a portion of the well field in place. We're adding a cooling tower, which will also reject heat. And essentially what that creates is what's called a hybrid system. There's a number of schools across the state that actually have a hybrid system anyways, and they function quite well. Now, I would say the biggest risk is just we're starting this up right before school starts, right? So we're gonna maybe have some hiccups where the pump doesn't run when it's supposed to, et cetera. We gotta work through those things and make sure we're getting everything operating correctly. Once it's operating and they've got everything kind of fine tuned, I feel pretty confident that it'll take care of your needs. And once everything's up and running, our biggest concern is just that peak in terms of August, September, where your hottest days. Once we get to further on in the school year, even if the cooling tower went down or your geothermal well field, you could probably operate on either system. So you'll have some redundancy outside of the peak months. Does that answer your question?
It does, but, it also gives that variable of, what if? And, for instance, it breaks down in the middle of the night. Are y'all on 24/7 call or,
From that aspect, it's not that different than before. If your building pumps goes out at one of your schools, you would have been in a similar situation, whether you're geothermal or whether you're a cooling tower, you're still susceptible to that. Now, you have redundant pumps in the building. The cooling tower has multiple fans, so if say one went offline, you still have some capacity there. So you're not gonna lose all your cooling, right? Would you lose a portion of it? Yes, if something failed, but Central Kentucky Sheet Metal that your mechanical contractor has a pretty large service team. So I feel pretty confident if there was a failure, we could get one of their staff on site to get that repaired in a timely manner.
thank you.
Can we ask questions before motion?
Yeah, that's.
Okay, yeah. So you said just if one of the fans failed, is it gonna be zoned? So it wouldn't affect the whole building, or it could affect, how does that work?
So it is a hydronic loop, which means water is flowing through piping, right? So the water, the way your school is set up, is water flows through a loop through the school, and it receives heat from all the zones that are cooling. You then have to reject that heat to somewhere else. In the geothermal application, it's rejected to the ground, and then it also goes to the cooling tower. So it's not zoned per se, saying the cooling tower serves this portion of the school and the geothermal, it all mixes, right?
You can use part of the school, sometimes, like that. It looks as if we're using just one company. Was there any competitive bids with this, or this is about the only one we could go?
We went, from my understanding, Devin, who's CMPA, did a lot of the field work to get this started with our contractor on site. And that was who can respond and meet the deadline in the most timely fashion.
So I wouldn't say there was bidding for the cooling tower, but there was alternate systems looked at. We talked about a chiller, we looked at a cooling tower, we looked at different systems and said, this is the most economical approach overall and available to get here on time.
And my last question, talking about how this happened and whatever, and the costs. So as of right now, our district is gonna have to put the cost. Is there any possibility that there would be some help or aid or some relief for this amount that's being expected to be paid right now?
So, and I'll start, because I think we'll all say similar things, maybe in different ways. One, we all agreed, the design team, that we would not seek any additional design fee for that scope, right? And from our side of it, the way I think of it is the geothermal contractor right now has been saying they can't be on site until January, I believe. And so since they can't be here, had we known they couldn't be here till January, we would have included this solution in the bid documents, right? So at that time, this amount would have been included in the bid. It would have been nice if it would have been there, so you could have sold bonds, had that money included all at once, and it wasn't, so that's unfortunate. But from that, so I just want you all to think of it that way, is realistically, had we all known that they couldn't have been on site and had the wells installed earlier, that's the avenue that would have gone, is we would have probably had to have done a temporary solution for cooling anyways. So that could have been in the bid documents. Now, what we've committed to is let us resolve it. Let us come up with a solution so you can get kids into school. We can provide reliable cooling. Then we'll work through all of that. But I do think it would have been better off for everybody had it been in the bid documents.
I guess my question for that is that if we knew that this was gonna be a problem in the beginning, why did we not schedule the geothermal to be redone at the start of the project rather than, well, now we're here and we're like, oh, well, yeah, we think we should have probably included that in the bid at the beginning, but we didn't. And now we're in this spot. Why was the geothermal not pushed to the front of the project? Or was it because we thought that the geothermal that we had was gonna be sufficient and there wasn't gonna be this problem? So that's my thing, is that, you know, I wasn't in the beginning of this project, so I don't know what the conversations were then, but if we thought that the geothermal that we have currently still existing was gonna be fine, why were we okay? If we didn't think it was gonna be fine, why were we okay with taking out the thermal wells and not replacing them at the beginning of the project compared to where we're at now, where we're
Well, I'll
saying.
speak on that part of the schedule. That is in a fill area. So we
Okay.
needed this material to bring that up to grade so we could put the fields in. So there was some logistics there that you could try to move it wherever you wanted, but
Sure.
until you got the ground ready, you couldn't put in.
Sure. So I guess another question for me is that then if there was that logistical issue, why didn't we go ahead and say, well, we're gonna have to use these cooling towers at the beginning? Why are we saying now we're coming in and saying, well, there was a scheduling issue?
It's not a scheduling issue. We were told and have been told, and I didn't know if this, you know, this setting would go there or not, but since we've been involved in this project, we were told that what would be remaining after we removed the well field would be sufficient. We
That's my
scheduled
question.
the well field for January. It wasn't because
Because
of
you
an
thought that the ones
oversight,
that were
it's
there would work.
intentionally scheduled for them because there was not a need for it to be online before then. I just found out about this Wednesday of last week. This has been going on for approximately 3 weeks, I think. The well field, the temps in the well field were rising. I think that it was I won't say as everyone thought this, I don't know where the information came from, but we've been told since we started the project, since we were hired on day one. That's the reason I have everyone, that's been involved in this from Trace Creek, because we've all heard this the entire time that it's gonna be sufficient. And then when we find out last week that, the temps are rising, it's not gonna be sufficient, that's where we're at. It wasn't because the contractor couldn't get on site. We scheduled for January. So it was intentional by us, but we base that off the information we're given. We don't design, we just, we schedule according to the, the documents we have, so.
So then the way you're operating is that there shouldn't have been a temporary system. The system we had currently should have cooled the school, and that there wasn't a temporary system proposed at the beginning because there wasn't a need for it.
That's correct. But I will say, what Chris has stated earlier, if we'd known that the temps would have risen, we would have still had the reason to have the cooling tower. And we could go into multiple reasons why it's performing the way it is. There's, the age of the system, maybe even the water, the groundwater affects all this. We've been in a dry time, it's been, we have some rain and all that, but ultimately, we're almost in a drought. That affects all those temperatures. And, there's many reasons why it is performing the way it is, but ultimately, in order for it to have school, this temporary cooling tower is gonna have to go in. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree that, we have to start school, but I'm also looking at, and I think that we're gonna have to do it, obviously, to get school started, and I know we wanna go down, I think that it's, in my opinion, we have to pursue at some point, should the district have to be saddled with this bill to pay for these towers that at the beginning of the project, we didn't need, and were told they weren't planned for because no one thought they needed them. So that's, you answered my question for what I was looking for.
I hope you understand where we're coming from too.
Oh, I do, by all means, and that, my feeling is kind of, like Dr. Stoll was saying earlier, that, it's, about the spitting match. I don't, down the road, I mean, I feel no pressure for us to be, I come here willing to actually make an offer for, to help out with it just because we're a team player, not because we feel any guilt in the reason why that we're having to bring this to you tonight.
Let me ask you another question. Like I said, all this out of my league. Is anything of this considered accidental?
Can you explain, what do you mean by accidental?
Just like a car crash. And I guess where I'm coming from, is there anything that can be contributed toward insurance on behalf of anyone about this, of not seeing something coming or whatever that was not planned or otherwise? Is there any? I guess I'm reaching for everybody.
Nobody's fault.
Off top of my head, I can't come up with something.
But I guess is it worth pursuing? Along that line, is there any extenuating circumstances out there that would cover and protect all of us, so to speak?
Not that I'm aware of. And so to pull you in on another piece of this is the well field itself is operating, there's a couple things. One, we've said it's operating a little warmer than what we expected. Definitely warmer than it was last year, and warmer than with the load of that building, with it not occupied, than we would expect. There's also, we've been out there for a week taking all kinds of readings and collecting data and watching it perform, and there's some things not operating quite how we expect. There's a larger pressure drop through the well field than I would calculate based off the design. There's a few things like that that suggest there's some other issue going on that's contributing to this. So that's when I say, I don't know of any, when you say an accident, but I also don't know what's causing that issue, right? I don't even know what that accident could be yet, but what I'm committing to is we're not done with this. We're not gonna say, pay this change order and we walk away. We've had, Devin Sheik in our office is the mechanical engineer on this project, and he spent, I don't know, 60, 70 hours last week on this issue alone. Then we had somebody else, Nick Cleaver, who was down in your school and going through it in depth and getting on your building management system and watching how everything was performing. And he's been doing the same thing today. So we continue to watch this operation and try to figure out what's going on, right? Is it, because we see silly things, right? Where there's a blockage in a pipe that causes reduced flow or increased pressure drop, and maybe we're not getting flow through part of the well field, and that's why we're not getting it, right? And that's not necessarily an accident, right? It's an existing, who knows when that happened.
Could that be a design flaw from the original time that it was put in?
Well, so when I'm going back, I went through and Devin went through the calculations, and then I went through the calculations on that existing well field, looking at the existing design and seeing how it's performing. That's where the difference is. It should be performing a little bit different. I can't yet say why we're getting that pressure drop. I don't think it's, part of it, it's a little bit hard to say exactly how pipe was installed that's under the ground, right? We've got the original drawings, and we've got, it was supposed to be 320-foot deep wells. So I can't get down there with the tape measure and confirm it's 320 feet. But going off everything on those documents, the design, it should be performing a little bit different than it is. We shouldn't be seeing the elevated temperatures that we are. Now, we still need a cooling tower. I know that, but I also know there's some other factors in there that I can't say what they are yet. And we're still working on those.
The building should be cool, should be comfortable right now though, correct? Mathematically,
Are you saying just with,
without having the heat gain from all the students and stuff, and the building being occupied. If you go in the building right now, it should be a comfortable, just like
Yeah, it's-
this.
it should be able to maintain, right now.
And it's not.
Well, irregardless, we won't have to do this. And I was just thinking, I was in the first graduating class, in 1965, we had no air conditioning. How did we survive?
It wasn't as hot. I mean, we were
Whoa.
used to home, we didn't grow there.
All right.
So,
I have one more question. Should we make a comment?
well, go ahead,
Okay, you have explained that the geothermal is scheduled to begin in January and end in April. If there is any possibility that the geothermal people could come in early, would that fit in with everything else that's going on as the construction is taking place? So there wouldn't be people on top of people? Because we always had this concern, starting in January, you don't know what our winter's gonna be like. And whether it could be completed in April. So is there any possibility it could begin earlier if they were able to do that?
That's something that's been worked on. David's been actually working with them closely on that.
Yes, so to answer your question in one word, yes. To elaborate on it is after the meeting with Dr. Stahl and the rest of the team, I had already reached out to the contractor that is under contract with you that has that portion in their package, and trying to see if they can advance on that schedule now that all and the site work team have the general area that the geofield, it's not 100% there, but it's a lot further than it was 60 days ago. The problem with that is geothermal wells are a limited source of contractors that do it. There's only a certain pool, and in the world of construction right now, they're all very busy. So but yes, to answer your question, we are pursuing that. I am pursuing that with the contractor that we've got that's using them as sub because they're a specialized firm. I will go as far to see if there is a way that they can change geofield contractors to see if they can find someone that could do it quicker. I'm not confident because of my knowledge and our knowledge of how much of that work is going on right now, and every geofield well contractor is extremely busy. So, but yes, we are pursuing that. We are trying to advance that from January up as much as we can. If we can advance it 30 days, we will. If we can advance it 60, we will.
I'm very pleased to hear that.
All right, anybody else?
I got one more. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear with how this whole timeline plays out. So at the beginning of the project, were there calculations done that said we can take out the second field and the other field will be able to keep the building cool? At the beginning, I don't know who did that or if it was you all that did those.
It would have been us, we were the only people that can do that calculation. And I don't think we would have done the calculations. I don't think, and keep in mind, I'm not Devin Cheek, the designer, so I can't say exactly what he said, and the reason I'm covering this is he's on vacation this week. He offered to cancel his vacation so he could come here tonight, and I told him, no, that's, you go, I'll be here, right? So I don't want to say that there's no chance he said something or he exactly said something. Here's what I know. He did those calculations. And at that time, this is me inferring, he did the calculations and said, you can keep the school up and running, right? You can operate the school in the summer, under summer load with that well field. He also knew you had to add wells back, and that's why we did it. What he has told me was his understanding was that well field, he thought it was going in by the fall. So for the August, when I say fall. So his expectation was that when he showed up in July, that it was going to be in progress, and it wasn't. And that raised a red flag that he got concerned. And then they talked about the schedule and found out it's January. And that's when he went back and reviewed those calculations and said, we've got an issue, right? So that's when the emails started flying and people started looking into it further. That's what I know.
So we've had the communication. Okay.
So,
Which is gonna cost a big chunk of our contingency.
so let me just clarify a few things. Number one, we were told repeatedly that the field would work. Brad Avey asked numerous times because it was a concern for him. So from the get-go, that was a question that came out of your staff because they wanted to make sure, because they knew what was going on, and they were told, he was told repeatedly, this is not going to be a problem. The fields that we had previously were in excess of what we needed to operate the high school. So when the numbers came bad, the notification that we first made was on July 6th. You have that there. You can see that we were very detailed about what the problem was. And Brad tracked on a daily basis from that point to make sure that we knew what the comparison was from year to year, last year to this year, to make sure that we were aware. Brad's team has put in every bit as much time as Devin Cheek or CMTA has. Our team has been out there at the high school as well, doing a job that we don't think was our responsibility. We don't think it was our responsibility for what happened. We don't think it was our responsibility to try to fix it, but we did. And Brad will tell you that a ton of time was put in by our staff to try to make sure that we were ready to go. I was very blunt with this team on Thursday when I said to them, they've handcuffed you. You don't have an option tonight. You can't say, no, let's figure out who's responsible. We're going to have to make this decision because it's the right thing to do in this particular scenario. But I do want to be clear that while what you're hearing is not inaccurate, you need to understand how much effort was put in by your staff to make this work. And only because we were told that this was okay, that was not our job. You all hired these folks to do that job. They're your team to make this happen. You said earlier this was over your head. I don't think any of us, except maybe Mr. Smith has an understanding of what this looks like, and that's why we have the confidence in the people that are setting out there to do it. Having said that, it does not change what has been said by everybody here. This is a solution that we've got to deal with now. We've got to move forward with that, in my opinion. It's your all's decision, but we have to make that decision tonight so that we're capable of doing what we need to get done.
And I did not mean to minimize your team's impact at all.
No, no.
I 100% agree. They have been right by our side, trying to troubleshoot what's going on and look at the system and make sure. So we very much appreciate their efforts in this, because it isn't their, you know, you're getting kids back in school, they've got enough to do right now. So I understand that added burden this has been.
One more comment. Since the end of this conversation, well, first I want to thank you all for working together as a team, as you should, and that's why we've hired you to do that. But I hope that we will not have any more communication problems, because it sounds like we knew we had to get land ready. We knew, but some people thought that the field was going to be early, and now it's January. So there's a 6-month delay in communication about when this was going to take place, and my question is why. And I hope it doesn't come up anymore. I hope we don't have any more things that come up to say, well, we thought it was going to happen here, and it's going to happen here. 6 months with winter and the weather we have in Kentucky, it's scary. So concerned about that, and then we're having to take the hit with the cost, and that's not good. That's not good.
Well, you're correct, Ms. Davis, we did get the cart before the horse, but this is a special, unique situation. But at this time, I'd like to call for a motion, and Dr. Stull has said we've got to do this, so I'm sure you're recommending this.
It's my recommendation that you approve the change order necessary to get the high school operational through the cooling tower.
You heard the recommendation, do I have a motion?
So move, we really don't have a choice.
Thank you. Mr. Hurt made the motion, to have a second.
I second it.
David
This
seconded.
is for our students and staff.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, we gotta put the kids first.
This is for our people. This is for our
We've got to
school
put the kids
family.
first. All right, we ready to vote? All in favor, let me know by looking at hand. The 4 board members present voted to accept, so get that cooling tower here. All right, that brings us to item 3, which is to approve E-rate project for networking equipment.
Each year, we receive some money through an E-rate system, and Chris can talk about this, Mr. Lang can talk about this in more detail. What I provided you with on your screen right now is the total cost of the project that he is proposing to update our networking system. The district cost for this is slightly over $100,000, but it's already in our CAT's budget, so it shouldn't be a big shock to our system in any fashion. This just allows him to move forward with that, so I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Lang.
It's just, the year program, gives us access to funds basically to overhaul the network every couple of years. I put in a request for, and basically, usually I've done it in pieces. This is, just happens to be a lot larger because it's the whole thing, core, all the switches and wireless, in one shot. But again, we've got the funding, through CATS, which is money we get from the state, to cover our portion of it, and then the rest will be covered by E-rate. Again, it's already approved, so. I mean, I guess if y'all say no, I can cancel it, we can try again. But yeah, it's kind of where we're at with that.
But our cost would be $100,588.73, that's for that district.
But it's already covered in the CAT's budget.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
So it's my recommendation that you approve this E-rate project for updating our networking equipment.
thank you, sir, you've heard the recommendation, do I have a motion?
I move we approve the E-rate project.
Okay, Ms. Davis made the motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Smith seconded, any questions or comments? Thank you, Chris. All in favor, let me know by lifting hand. 4 board members present voted aye. Item 3 is approved, which brings us to item 4.
Motion adjourned.
Mr. Smith made motion to adjourn, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hurd seconded, all in favor, let me know by lifting hand. We are adjourned. Thank you all so much for coming, appreciate you.